Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the Broken Podcast. I got my good friend Johnny here. First video, really just to introduce the page, kind of give you all an idea of what we're going to be talking about here. So I got Johnny here with me today, and we're going to talk about, this whole podcast is all revolved around the system that is built into America, and I'm sure other countries out there, that really divides parents, when individuals separate, and how the children suffer. Today's topic is going to be about toxic relationships. And Johnny and I, it's a very informal conversation, just showing real life stories, like what people are going through out there and how broken our system is, to understand and really, do what's best for the children, which is obviously the number one thing. So that being said, Johnny, good afternoon. What's going on?
Much Playboy, man. Just chilling, Easy day at work today.
Nice.
Supposed to be putting in a shed, but gotta go get materials and you know how that goes, wait for money, supplies,
Oh yeah, do all
things of
that.
that nature. But it's the weekend, it's the week before Thanksgiving, so I'm just taking easy, kicking back, relaxing, got a lot of things to do, of course, family things. I do a
Right,
lot of
right.
cooking during the holidays, so you know, and that's another thing I hope we touch on. No, for me, I don't no responsibilities when it comes to male female. Everybody's responsible for themselves. So I'll get
Right.
that out the way.
Right. Personal
um,
accountability, right? It's all about that personal accountability. I'm with you
correct.
there. I'm with you
Yeah.
there. Yeah, and Johnny, you and I got a lot of kids, so we got some experience in this field. So
Right.
yeah, I wanted to kick it off. Again, it's all about personal experience. This is the disclaimers on the page. We're sharing individual experiences on this podcast. So we're not giving legal advice. None of this here. Nobody should use any information here to justify any legal pursuant
Battle.
yeah action. So
Right.
with that being said, Johnny, toxic relationships, right? We
Yep.
all, I'm sure all of us have been through them, and how that negatively impacts children. So why don't you share with us, a little bit on your thoughts on it, maybe from firsthand
My
experience.
perspective, from my
Yeah,
personal experience,
perspective. Yeah,
yeah. Well,
exactly.
I mean, given that I have four children, one being 24 and he's with a previous. Now I was young. I was in high school. Um, so right there, you're already off at a bad start because you have no experience when
Mhm.
it comes to shit, when it comes to raising a family or anything. And the
Right.
crazy thing about it is when I, became a father, even before I became a father, I ended up being somewhat of a father because when I moved in with my then ex, I mean now ex, she had a brother and sister living with her, and the mom was in and out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Personal situation. I don't want to talk about things like that when it comes to because that's their business. But
Yep.
I'll just speak from my experience and give you
Yep.
what I can. And so I inherited two kids while I
Wow.
was a freshman, sophomore in high school. You
Mm.
know what I'm saying? I was paying rent by the time I was in 10th grade. All
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So, my experience stems back from the time I was 15 years old, going on 16. And I mean, even before that, I had a fire and I lived in the basement of my, at that time, eighth grade girlfriend's basement for a couple months. And I mean, stayed there throughout the summer, took me on vacation. So, that's a good experience, I could say. But I was young then. I mean,
Right.
to say
Right.
after that, I went to having a kid. It's crazy, but
Right.
that's what. And we were together throughout our whole high school career, and I think about a year after high school is when we broke up.
Hmm.
Uh, and I approached her about it. It was just bad, and I mean bad just because we were young,
Right.
and we had our idea of you know trying
What
to
it was
make
supposed
up
to look
for
like.
right, what our life should be like as teenagers, what we missed out on because of all the responsibility we had.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, I've always been a very responsible person. It's just the way I was taught. I mean, I didn't have it any easier growing up. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I didn't have, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not gonna speak ill of my parents or my family, but I had a fucked up upbringing, and you know that because you've been around this for a long time. So
Right, right.
what I'm saying. You know a lot of stuff. You've seen a lot of stuff. So I never really had positive experiences to go off of to make things right. Or, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I went off what I thought was best, and
Right,
that's one thing I think us as humans should know the difference between right and wrong. And we do. Sometimes we make bad choices, and a lot of it is because we don't have that positive influence, and that's just another thing. We always need somebody to teach us or show us something. The thing is, we need to look at things ourselves, and when we know something's wrong, speak up. You know what I'm saying?
right,
And I say we should because it's not always just you. You got somebody else who's involved, and you always have to look at their emotions and their feelings. So when you want to approach somebody or something, I get it. It's scary because you don't know how someone's going to react. But I think all in all, when you're young and you're a teenager, I get it. It's different, but
yeah,
it's some sort of a semblance. You become responsible for yourselves. Once you know the difference between right and wrong, it's up to you to make those choices of what you
right,
want to do. So, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't hold it against nobody. It's called learning experience. It's how we grow.
right. Well,
You know?
it's a good point, Johnny. I want to ask you, right? So I'm always, thinking things, I probably overanalyze everything a little bit too much, but you brought up a really good point. So how much of, going back to the toxic relationships, right? Generationally, right? You look at it, like I look at it, as generations have come down, our generation specifically, the father figures we had in our life were not good examples of maintaining a healthy relationship. Most of the friends that I have, and the people that I interacted with, were not positive role models on how to like foster a good, healthy relationship with a woman. So how much, or a partner, not necessarily a woman, but a woman for me, but a partner in general. So how much of that do you think plays into, the toxic relationships, what we tolerate, where we draw lines, boundaries, and all that?
You're a product of your environment.
Hmm.
I mean, you only repeat what you see. I mean, most people do
Right.
because we have a hard time breaking the bonds and the molds of what we're used to not seeing. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Some
Generational.
of us don't care to be the difference. We just say the
Mhm.
same. Well, we look at examples like, we're like, shit, my dad was the place, so what you think? You know what I mean? We say
Right.
things like that, like it's
Right.
cool. You know what I'm saying? But in hindsight, we don't really look at, as we get older, we have to be more responsible and not make
Hmm.
those same choices. We have to break those generational curses. We have to
Hmm.
break those molds that we're used to seeing now. Like case in point, you know, I've lived with my father, so I'm not gonna sit there and say that my dad was a horrible dad. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Did he have shitty relationships? Of course, we've seen it, but I see him go through a 15-year relationship with a woman where he worked, cooked. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
He did the laundry, like and that's where I get a lot of my influence from, and not to take any, because
Sure.
I'll tell you, my strength comes from my mother, watching
Right.
her, and a complex thing to see is when we were struggling going through our thing, we watched our mother struggle, and you say, "Damn, where was our pops at?" But he was, when you get older and you become a parent and you go through similar situations, you don't you sit there and you realize I shouldn't have questioned, but you don't know because you're a kid. And
Right.
at the same token, you end up becoming, which, like me, I'm not saying anything bad against my pops, but was he the greatest pops? Hell no. Were there situations where he should have been there and he wasn't? Fuck yes. But we don't make that an excuse.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And as a father, I would hope that, when I make those mistakes, that it's understood or looked at for me or for my kids and say, you know what? He tried. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I can see that with my pops. It's not like my pops was out running the streets, doing all sorts of gang shit. He got that out of his system when he was a teenager. By the
Hmm.
time he had us, he was working and,
Right.
trying to do what was right. Didn't say, not to say he didn't. And I have my situations where I fell into my shit. You know what I'm saying? But
Hmm.
as fathers, it's hard for us because we have to work, we have to provide. Like I said, the situation I was in high school,
Hmm.
working, taking care of kids that weren't mine, paying rent, and not only
Right.
just the kids, the whole family. Listen, I can go on and on about what I did for people, and you know, for me, it was as I take the negative things that have happened into my life and turn them into a positive,
Right.
and that's just how I roll. And that's why, if anybody knows me, will tell you like, "Yo, this dude is always happy. He's never sad, upset. He's because you know what I'm saying. I don't need to project, and that's what I've learned, is to take those negatives and turn them into a positive. Don't project them onto anybody else. And you know what I'm saying. So I teach my kids the same thing, and I'm
Right.
very real with my kids now. You know what I'm saying. I'm honest with them. Something I wish, and my parents were very honest and open with us. You know what I'm saying. My mother did drugs for a lot of years and didn't hide it, and everybody knew. Everybody on the block knew, but everybody knew my mom was cool too. You know what I'm saying? And for me you guys can say, oh, you can get upset with your mom, but understand what she had to go through to get her to that point.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And the one thing I can say, and this is what I'm saying, was a good influence was my mother. My mother never talked shit about my father. Never.
Right. Right.
Even when we went through our struggling times and we had to sleep outside in the wintertime, you know what I'm saying? Like, my mother wasn't like, yo, your dad's a bad person, because he wasn't.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? He had his situations he was going through. So, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's where a lot of things get lost is now with this newer generation. I say newer generation, it's kind of my generation a little bit.
Right. Right.
Where, people go there, and I'm not making excuses for any person who doesn't take care of their responsibilities.
Right.
As a man who takes care of his responsibilities, no excuse.
Right.
None.
Exactly.
But let's not sit here and pretend as human beings that we're all perfect and we all don't go through shit. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
The hardest thing is for somebody to stick with somebody when they're going through their roughest times. It's easy to say, fuck that, I'm gonna leave him alone and let him get his shit together, and then he can come see me.
That's when you find out who your real people are, who your real foot soldiers are, when you're going through it.
Right. Some of us are stronger than others and can handle that shit. And some of us ain't. And a lot of that stems from where you come from, what your environment was. You know what they say. Only the strong survive. And that's true, because if you can't go, get with the times, and, you're going to get left behind. And that's where you see people that you knew you grew up with turn to drugs, in jail. You know what I'm saying? All the negative things, because they never had those positive role models and influences, and a lot of it coming from a broken home.
Johnny,
you hear a lot of people talk about it nowadays. How can men get their manliness from a woman? And and it's true, when you think about it. But I don't know. My mom raised us for a good portion of our lives, and I see, I say I get my strengths from my mother, and I get my ethics from my father, because my father was a hardworking man, and you know what I'm saying. He did he fall in his ass a time or two? Of course he did, and we all do. But we don't have. There's nobody here to teach us about, putting our energies and focuses in the right places. And so I think that's what us now we need to do, is teach our younger generation to get back to what it used to be, which is, the two people, household shouldn't be about who does more, who does less. I can be a man, you can be a woman. Right. It shouldn't be a competition. And this 50-50 bullshit, it's 100-100. Because if you're not at your best, I need to know that, you need to know that I'm at mine all the time, so that if you fall, I can pick you up, vice versa. Right.
I heard this a long time ago, Johnny, and that's what they said, exactly what you said, and you said it perfectly. Both parties got to be 100-100, and then the whole purpose behind that is because everybody goes through times. So when that person drops down to 20, the other person's got to pick up that 80 that was left behind, and that's what a true, real relationship is. But you said you talked a lot about strength, and I love philosophy and all that. And there was a quote by G. Michael Hoff, I believe, and I love this quote, and it's like hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So it's all
the cycle.
It's
It's
a
a cycle.
cycle. And if you look at it from a generational perspective, right, you had all the World War II, right? And then after the war, everything was good, right? Everybody,
Right,
so life was good. And then
right,
that brought our parents' generation. And then that's when drugs exploded. Everybody, it was a
right,
good time. The economy was good. Everything was good. So then
right.
drugs, alcohol. I love it. You see it on TikTok and all that all the time. The memes for our generation where they had to put the commercials on TV. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Like
Yeah,
that was real. We were just
yeah.
out doing our own thing, and they had to have celebrities come on just to say, "Hey, you guys know where your kids are at?" And that was the generation. But so then it
Well, we-
slid and it overcorrected the opposite way, and everybody got lazy and complacent. And then
right.
our father figures had it too easy. So, and then that created the hard times that we're in right now. So now we got to cycle it back and create those good times again by building strong men and women that
Right.
can create that atmosphere and environment for children, right? Because that's again, it's what this podcast is all about. Like the children, those are the ones who are suffering
They
and all
suffer.
this with
They're the
all
ones
this
who suffer.
toxicity with
Exactly.
relationships and parents and co-parenting and
Right.
parental interference and
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's really the crux of all what we're trying to expose and put out there. Like
Well, a
these are
lot
real
of it,
life stories that people are going through.
a lot of it's influence. Everybody
Mhm.
sees what everybody goes by what they see on social media and the
Right,
TVs and those platforms. Take all that shit away and use your brain.
right,
Use your brain for a
right.
second. And people, what it is people tend to use their emotions during situations, and that's where we falter as humans. And
Mhm.
believe it or not, it's the truth.
Mhm.
Because when you make a decision based off emotion, it's not always the right or
Right,
wrong decision.
right,
You know what I'm saying? It's the decision you made based off your emotion. Now, if you make a decision based off logic, you're going to be in a better shape than the person who goes off emotion because you
right,
already know what's to come, bad or good.
right,
And you know what I'm saying? You're already ready to deal with the consequences. See, when you're a person and you do good things and you know at the end of the day you can rest your head easy, then the decisions you make, you can rest with. You know what I'm
right.
saying? But even if you make bad choices, don't make excuses for them.
Hmm.
Own up to
Hmm.
it. You
Right.
were ignorant.
Yep.
You were
Take
stupid.
ownership. Yep.
Nobody showed me any better, but that's make an excuse for why I did it. I did it because I didn't know any better. That's how we
Right.
learn.
Right.
Without darkness, there will be no light.
Right. Right.
We
Right. And
need
you
it. You
learn
know what
more
I'm
from
saying?
your mistakes than you ever learn, from failure than success. And that's
I just
proven. It's proven over
right,
and over again. When you fail, you learn from that. When you're succeeding and everything's going good, there's no learning experience in that because you're
just
just riding
right,
the wave.
right. Exactly. There's nothing. There's no opposing force to
Hmm.
test you.
Yin and
All right.
yang.
And
Yep.
and the problem is when those tests come and they arise, a lot of the times people fold because they don't, you know what I'm saying? They have a hard time accepting reality. A lot of people don't want to take accountability for their actions.
Hmm.
And, if two people cannot make a good choice and you can't sit there and rightfully say, listen, we're not being right for each other. We're not
Hmm.
like, if my decision affects you negatively, that's toxic. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
even if it was a good or bad, like no matter what, if we can't sit down and talk about it,
Right.
that's toxic.
Right.
And if anytime we try to talk about it, you shut me down,
Hmm.
that's toxic.
Hmm.
You're never going to grow. You're never going to learn if you don't listen. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
And a lot of the times people don't listen. And when I say they don't listen, is somebody can say something and be like, oh, I got to change for this person. Listen, when you get with somebody, you should already know what their
Right.
habits are, who they are as a person. Okay?
Right. Right.
What you do is you don't change them. You
Yep.
make them better
Right.
because you've already seen something good in them. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Why would you try to change what you already liked?
Right. And there's so many studies on that. It's that save. I'm going to save him. I'm a saver. I'm going to save him. I'm going to save her. I'm going to be the one that's going to change him and change him or her and bring that. And it's such a flawed philosophy because humans are humans. Like you're built based on your experience, based on your upbringing, based on all that
Right.
stuff. That's what defines you as a human. So to try to change those core principles that person's on, it's not going to happen. And anybody that, like you said, to your point, they came into the relationship knowing who you were as a person. So to say, that I no longer want that person. It's really not fair in that type of a situation for either party. And that's where that toxic side comes in, right? And
Yep.
and Johnny, I know you and I, we know people, and you hear stories of some of the toxic relationships that go on and how it negatively impacts children. And it always, what blows my mind is how people are completely ignorant to the fact of the impact that it has on the children. Like, if you have a loving father or mother in a child's life, why would you deny a child to create and foster a bond and continue that bond? Why would you purposely try to negate that and try to stop that, knowing it's putting yourself before your kids? All the studies show that children that have a loving father and mother, or two, whatever the situation is, two parents having a loving, that's the best upbringing. They become successful, they're happy, all the stats show that that's what's best. So knowing that, why do people do what they do? Why would you purposely do that, knowing that it's how negatively it's impacting a child? That's what I can't wrap my head around.
Because they're not foreseeing what it causes. They're only feeling their pain. And this is where we are guilty of being selfish as humans, because we don't put this is what I'm talking about, emotions making us weak. We don't put our emotions aside to think about somebody else, or to think about how our situation affects those around us. Okay.
Right.
And because you're in your emotions, you're saying, nah, I'm just going to do what my emotions tell me. They're making me feel this way, so I'm going to act that way. Okay.
Right.
Instead of taking the time and sitting there saying, listen, let me take a second, breathe, and approach the situation where I could say, listen, I'm not feeling comfortable. This is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And people will be like, oh, that's just, listen.
Right.
If you want drama in your life, have drama in your life. If you want to argue, argue.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. You have every right to. Listen, just because there's fire, that doesn't mean you put your hand over it, right?
Right.
You know it's there, you see it's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You already know what the dangers are. Why would you play with it?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, let's not dance around shit. Let's sit there and attack the issue.
Be real. Mm-hmm.
If you can't, and this is the problem. Somebody wants somebody to blame because of the outside influences.
Right.
Especially now, people care about status in life,
Yeah.
and status being, what you have and how you portray your life. And a lot of people live their life through social media, and a lot of it's false. Listen, I've only been active recently on social media just to show people, like, this is what I do on a daily basis, and not only to be an example that I'm a positive person every day. You know what I'm saying? I'm happy every day. And even when I go through my downs, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't put it on nobody. I don't go to my kid. I don't take it out on nobody. I deal with it myself. And if whoever I have the problem with, I try to have that conversation. And if they don't want to have the conversation, then I don't need to have the conversation. That's fine. I'm not butthurt about it. I don't let my emotions get the best of me. You know what I'm saying? Whenever somebody's ready to deal with me and talk about it, we can do that. But until then, we'll go about our business. I don't have to pretend like I hate you or I'm mad at you. If we have a situation and we got to work it out, at some point in time, we're going to work it out. It becomes toxic the longer you go without working with, with those issues, because I have to be around you, especially when you get kids.
Right.
If it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It does. It's just like, I just hope that people understand, like, going through relationships, sometimes it takes a long time, or it takes a little time to find out, like, yo, this isn't me. Right. When you find out that it isn't you, or things aren't working out, that doesn't mean you hate each other. You go about blaming each other for anything. You just say, something, the writing's on the wall. It is what it is.
Right.
Let's make this work for our kids, because the kids are the one who suffer.
Right.
You should be able to go to your kids and say, listen, kids, mom and dad are not having an easy time right now. I mean, depending on the age too, it's all situational.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely situational.
To be like, hey, mom and dad are here. They're gonna look at you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So you can't do that. You know what I mean? You can't. It's one of those things where it's difficult, and a lot of the times, as a man, we'll look at that and say, yo, I don't want that for my kids. I don't want that for my daughter. I don't want that for my son. I want it to work out.
Right.
And a lot of the times, we overlook the bullshit that we put ourselves through, not just
sacrifice,
the bullshit that somebody is giving us, but what we, because believe it or not, it takes two to tango. And if we know the situation, we got to be able to recognize it ourselves and to sit down and say, hey, and I get it. Some situations are different where you try that and the
Right.
person just doesn't want to have that conversation
Right.
because they have a hard time with taking accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's what it boils down to is knowing when you're wrong and fixing it. That's all.
Right. And
It's as simple as that.
Johnny, I'm telling you, I don't pretend to have all the answers and all that stuff, but when it comes to that type of toxic relationships and things of that nature, you talked a lot about communication. People, I find personally, people nowadays, nobody wants to address the elephant in the room, right? Nobody wants to have difficult conversations, and they just can't wrap their head around having that difficult conversation and being upfront and being honest and addressing that elephant in the room because it's there. So, and I think that builds a lot into the toxic nature, because then there's resentment in the household, right? Because there's this big issue going on. It's not being spoken about. It's not being talked about, from whether it's both parties, one party, whatever the case may be. But that elephant doesn't go away. So then any little thing that's going on in the household, it all kind of goes back to that. And it creates such a toxic relationship where, people, you can't stand being around the person anymore at that point, because you're just like, what the hell? Like,
Bad.
So
that's bad. Listen, you shouldn't be ever, you should never, like I said, when you build, and what kills me is, it's like a relationship you build with anybody. Like, sometimes you go through ups and downs with friends, but people, like, I get it, your boyfriend, girlfriend, you don't have to be friends, you don't. But you build a relationship over time. And and like I said, everything's situational. If a man beats you, just treats you wrong the whole time, then, fuck that dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no reason for it. And, people will be like, oh, I'm sure, listen, you can defend whoever you want. Let's look at it this way. No man should ever put their hand on a female.
Right.
One.
Exactly.
All right. That's my point. Now, if a female wants to get violent with a man, then everything that's gonna happen, it goes hand in hand. What do you expect is gonna happen? I think the problem is, and will always be, is that somebody's got to be right and somebody's got to be wrong.
Right.
It's not even about that. It's about growing beyond what's right and wrong, knowing that the past is the past and that you can only work on the future. And if you're not willing to let go of the past, then you're never going to move on into the future. And that's also a toxic trait. You know what I'm saying? And now, like, you can't, a past is part of who we are. Letting go of the past is hard for some of us because it's been such a traumatic event. And some of us have never healed from our past wounds, okay? And you project.
Right.
Just like when people cheat or do something, they project. It's the same thing. You project. And instead of facing it internally, dealing with it, and if you need to talk about it with someone, go talk about it, And I get it's hard because everybody wants to judge you nowadays.
Right.
And that's what we're all afraid of. A lot of people are afraid of their peers and what they think of them, and that's the problem. If you live your life according to what others think, you're never going to live your life. You're going to let other people live your life.
It's a popularity contest, social status. It's
Listen, there's two things guaranteed in life: you live and you die. What you do in between is what you do in between. Now, you people can believe in what they believe in, religion, this, that. That's what makes us human. We all have different walks, and then, like I said, and this ties into when you get into a relationship, you can't expect someone to be what you want them to be. Okay, you can't control what somebody does. The choices they're gonna make, the decision, nothing. The only thing you can do is be a positive influence and a positive role model in their life, and let somebody, you know what I mean? Like, and that's all you could ever be. And somebody will either follow your lead, take your hand, ride with you, and do the same, or they're going to live the life that everybody else wants them to live and live by how everybody else thinks they should live because, oh, your man's not home, he's working all the time. Are you sure of that? You know what I mean? And, once those doubts and those things get, and people need to understand competition, there's so much that ties into this. And to me, it's like you said, it's how the system is set up. Think about the child support system. The mother has all the rights. I was told years ago when I wanted my son to live with me, and I used to talk to my ex like, hey, listen, if he's giving you a hard time, have him come live with me. My door was always open for my son to come live with me. And never once did he ever live with me. One summer I had him. And I mean, I've taken him all the time. I've always been in my son's life. Like I said, I've had my rough patches, but I've always maintained to be a positive father in my kid's life. I may not have made every game. I may not have made every meeting, but I was there when it counted, and I was there when it mattered. Okay, we can't, and that's why we as parents have to have each other's backs.
Right.
That's why there's two of us. That's actually, I mean, and not only that, the family should be involved too. You know, family plays the key role into everything.
Sure.
It's not just us two, but when it is just us two, to me, the love, the bond should be that much stronger because it's always been just you two. And a lot of the times, it's not that because it becomes a competition.
Right.
Who's a better parent? Who does this better? And because, like I said, social status.
Sure.
You know, people care about their aesthetics, like what the household looks like.
Right.
And you can't do that. And parents now want to be their kids' friends. Don't get me twisted. I love being my kids' friends. They're teenagers now, so I love being in their life. I love being involved. Right? I want to be involved because, you know, if they ever feel a certain way or they're going through things, I want to be able to recognize it. And, you know, having another parent, you know, one's, you know, I get it. One's got to be the disciplinarian. One's got, no, we should both be the disciplinarian and we could both be friendly. But we both got to maintain being good parents to our kids. Now, if me and you have a disagreement about something, we shouldn't be arguing in front of our kids. We make a sound choice in front of them. And when we go to bed at night and we have our little powwow and we sit there and we say, hey, I didn't agree with what you, that's how it should be.
Unified in the direction that you're raising your children. It's a unified approach to it instead of, you know, two different approaches that, you know, there's nothing's ever really completed in the child. You're just confusing the kids more. Yep.
So like
great chaos.
I'm saying, you're like, I'm laying out to you as reasons for toxicity, you know, like how it happens a lot of the times. And it takes two to tango. It's not, we can't just blame the woman, you know what I'm saying? Us as men, we got to take our responsibility in it because, you know, we prolonged it a lot of the times. And instead of us speaking up, because, you know, as the man, we're looked at as we got to be tough. Oh,
ego gets in the way. Ego gets in the way.
Right. And then, you know, when you hear that, you're sitting there like, damn. So you're telling me I can't be vulnerable with you as my lady? You know what I'm saying? I can't sit and cry in your arms because you feel like I always got to be the man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know I'm always the motherfucking man.
Right.
Because that's what I do. That's what I go out here and I do every day. I be a man, not the man, a man.
Right.
I don't like when, you know, a lot of people tell me, oh, you're a good guy, you're a great guy, you do. Like, I hate being labeled as anything. One, I'm an entity. I'm a human being.
Sure.
Look at me like that first before I'm even a man.
A human, a father, human.
Treat me as a human first, and then look at me as what I'm responsible for after as a man.
Right.
And if I'm doing that, you know what I'm saying? You know, it should be reciprocated. You know, if I'm doing that, support me, and if you're doing, I'll support you.
Right.
You know, I get it. At times we get at each other's throat because, you know, it happens. It's natural. You're around somebody all the time. You know what really fucked it up is COVID.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I know we could all get on that one. Oh, oh, it's true.
I know it's a joke. I'm just joking. But, you know,
it's true.
It exposed, that shit exposed a lot. And how, you know, people, you know, when they get around each other truly and show that, you know, they start to see like, oh shit, maybe not everything is peaches and cream. But the thing is, once you realize that, talking about it and trying to work those issues out, you know, not projecting, but talking about your insecurities or saying, you know, telling somebody, you know, this bothers me about what you know, can we work on something? You know what I mean? Let me tell you why. You know, y'all should be able to communicate that, and it shouldn't be somebody tell you something and then, well, let me tell you what bothers me about you.
Right. Or bring something up from the past, something that, you know, something that in the past that's been lingering again, going back to that.
Especially when you look at who you was in the past and you've already made great strides and changes to be a better person, be a better version of yourself. You don't have to necessarily change who you are as a person, but you may change your habits and you may change the things you do. All right. Like, case in point, remember back in the days when we used to do music all the time, go out, shows. I went, you know, I took a time, I'm like, yo, I ain't making no money. I ain't, you know, if anything, this is being a detriment to me and my family. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's that was that family first.
You know what I'm saying? Like, That's like I said, and that's the accountability part for me as
Right.
a man that I took and said, you know something, I was being irresponsible.
Right.
Let me flip it up, smack it up, flip it, rub it down. Oh no, here we are.
Right.
And I take care of business. My
And here we
family comes
are.
first.
And here we are.
My family comes fucking first.
Always.
And
Always.
and you know, and
That's how it should
I don't
be.
speak about, you know, like my relationship now. I'll
Yeah.
talk about my past relationships.
Yep.
My relationship because I only really had one. I've only,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like I, I've done my fair share of things. Don't get it twisted, but you know, I've only had really 2, 3 relationships, and that just speaks because I take a relationship serious. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not in it to, you know, mentally f anybody over, and especially
Yeah.
if we have kids, because now you know you share something that you can't take back. That's a life.
Right.
You know.
Well, Johnny, you know what we're
And
gonna have to do, right? Because I know people are gonna want to hear these stories. We're gonna have to do a part two. We're gonna have to do a part two,
I got you. I
right?
got you.
And what we're gonna have to do is we'll have to share some insights into so some of those toxic relationships and examples of what we've been shown. Let the world know out there some of the experiences we've seen, and I'm looking forward to bringing you back on here as much as possible, Johnny.
Listen,
And I want to
I
get
can
some
sit
people
next
in
to you on the
here.
couch, bro. I'll sit next
Listen,
to you on the couch. We can talk about this shit
exactly,
all day.
exactly. This is the Broken Podcast. We're going to talk about how broken all this shit is and how we going to get it back. How we going to get it back, right? How we